I'm 25, and my sister Jessica is 27. We've never been the best of friends, but we weren't enemies either. Just two siblings who tolerated each other, mostly because we had no choice. Growing up, she always had a way of making things about her, and I learned early on that the best way to keep the peace was to stay out of her way. I still live with my parents, not because I want to, but because I'm saving up to move out. I have a stable job, a decent salary, but in this economy, renting on my own is expensive, and I'd rather wait until I can afford a place I actually like. Jessica, on the other hand, has always been flashy with money. She just bought herself a brand new luxury car, a car so expensive, I don't even understand how she managed to afford it. Of course, she made sure everyone knew about it. She drove it to every family gathering, took endless photos, and made passive-aggressive comments about how some people would never have nice things if they kept wasting money on frivolous things, whatever that meant. Lately, she'd been acting weird, more smug than usual. She kept making these little digs at me. Things like, maybe if you worked harder, you'd have your own place by now, or public transport must be exhausting. I don't know how you do it. I ignored it. It wasn't worth the fight. But then, one morning, everything exploded. I was in the kitchen making coffee when Jessica came storming in, screaming at the top of her lungs. I barely had time to register what was happening before she was in my face, shoving her phone at me, yelling about how I was a jealous psycho who had taken things too far. Confused, I took a step back and finally understood what she was saying. Someone had keyed her car. Badly. Deep scratches ran all along the driver's side, and she was convinced that someone was me. She wasn't just mad, she was livid, shaking with rage. She kept repeating that she knew I did it, that she had proof. She swore up and down that she had seen me outside late at night near her car. I hadn't even left my room. I told her that, but she wasn't listening. Our parents rushed in, alarmed by the shouting. Mom immediately tried to calm her down, but Jessica wouldn't stop. She pulled up a blurry image on her phone, a grainy security camera screenshot from the neighbor's house. It showed a vague figure near her car at some point during the night. The image was so blurry it could have been anyone. It could have been her. It could have been someone passing by. But no, in Jessica's mind, it was me. Dad looked at the picture, sighed, and muttered that it wasn't clear enough to prove anything, but Mom hesitated. I could see it on her face. She wasn't sure. And then she hit me with the worst sentence possible. Why don't you just apologize and move on? It's not worth fighting over. I couldn't believe it. I hadn't done anything. Why should I apologize? I refused. But Jessica wasn't backing down. She started crying, saying she worked too hard for her things, that she had always been good to me, and this was how I repaid her. I just stood there, stunned. There was no reasoning with her. And then, things got worse. Jessica went online. She posted about how a certain family member had vandalized her car out of jealousy. She didn't name me outright, but it was obvious who she was talking about. Our mutual friends saw it, and soon I started getting messages. Some were asking what happened. Others flat out called me a horrible person. The gossip spread fast. Then my boss pulled me aside. Someone had forwarded them the post. They weren't accusing me of anything, but they made it clear that if this turned into a legal matter, they didn't want the company's name associated with it. I was humiliated. And then the final blow, Jessica filed a police report. I found out when an officer called me, asking if I could come in for questioning. I wasn't arrested or anything, but the fact that my own sister had gone this far made my blood boil. I showed up, answered their questions, and told them exactly what happened. I was inside my room all night. I could even prove it with my phone's location history. But that wasn't enough for Jessica. She wanted me punished. Back at home, the tension was unbearable. I couldn't even look at her. I couldn't understand how someone could be so cruel. That's when I decided I wasn't going to argue anymore. I wasn't going to beg for people to believe me. I was done talking. Instead, I took action. The next day, I ordered security cameras. I installed them around the house, making sure one was positioned directly at Jessica's car. If she was so convinced I had done it, then fine. Next time something happened, we'd have actual proof. And part of me had a feeling that something would happen. The cameras were in place. I made sure they were hidden but covered all the key areas, the driveway, the front porch, and the side yard. One was angled perfectly toward Jessica's car. I didn't tell anyone. If she knew, she'd twist it into something ridiculous, saying I was spying on her or trying to manipulate things in my favor. No, this time I was going to let the truth come out on its own. For the next few days, I kept quiet. I didn't respond to her online posts. I ignored the messages from mutual friends. But Jessica wasn't done. She made sure people at my job kept hearing about it. A coworker approached me, awkwardly mentioning that Jessica had sent them a message about how I had no remorse for what I did. I didn't take the bait. I let her talk. I let her build her own case against me. Then it happened again. It was late, past midnight, when I heard the front door slam open. Jessica's voice cut through the silence, shouting loud enough to wake the entire house. I sat up, knowing exactly what was coming. Her tires had been slashed. She stormed into the living room, pointing at me the second she saw me. No hesitation, no doubt in her voice. She saw me outside, she swore. She had proof this time. The same act, the same accusations, but worse. Our parents rushed in, half asleep and confused. Mom immediately turned to me, eyes filled with exhaustion. Dad, though, was different this time. He wasn't jumping to conclusions. He was watching Jessica carefully, his face unreadable. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just told them to wait. Jessica wasn't expecting that. She was ready for me to start shouting, for me to lose my temper and give her more fuel. But I didn't. Instead, I pulled out my phone, turned on the TV, and mirrored the security feed for everyone to see. Silence. The footage started from a few hours ago. The driveway was empty. No one outside. Then, movement. A hooded figure slipped out the front door, moving quickly toward Jessica's car. The camera angle was perfect, clear enough to see everything. The person stopped at the driver's side. They bent down. They pulled something from their pocket. A sharp, deliberate movement. The tires deflated instantly. The person straightened up, looked around, then rushed back inside. Jessica. It was her. The room went still. The only sound was the TV playing back the video, looping over and over. Mom clapped a hand over her mouth. Dad exhaled sharply. Jessica stood frozen, her face pale. She blinked a few times like she was trying to process what just happened, then suddenly shook her head. "That's not me," she blurted out. It's edited. This isn't real. This is fake." Dad turned to her, his voice the calmest I'd heard all night. "Jessica, we just watched you do it." Jessica started shaking. Her whole body trembled, but it wasn't fear, it was panic. She looked at me, then at the TV, then back to me, her hands clenching and unclenching. "You're setting me up," she whispered, her voice uneven. You must have made this look like me. I don't know how, but you did." This isn't real." No one spoke. And then, as if things couldn't get any worse, there was a knock at the door. The police had arrived. Jessica turned sharply, eyes darting between the front door and the TV. She still had a chance to come up with something, to twist this into her own version of events. But the moment Mom turned to her, eyes filled with disappointment, something in her cracked. Her breathing became erratic. Her hands started shaking harder. She spun back to me, her face twisting into something unrecognizable. And then she snapped. "You deserved it," she screamed. "No more lies, no more pretending, no more fake accusations. You always act so perfect, like you're so much better than me. You think you're so smart, so innocent." A sharp knock interrupted her meltdown. Dad walked to the door, letting the officers inside. They stepped into the tense room, glancing between us. One of them spoke, asking about the call. Before anyone else could answer, I pressed play on the footage again. No words needed. The video told the entire story. Jessica was shaking her head over and over, her face crumbling. I didn't mean to." No one believed her now, not even herself. The officers watched the footage carefully, replaying it a few times to make sure they weren't missing anything. One of them turned to me, asking if I wanted to press charges for the false accusations. Jessica's head snapped toward me, her breath hitching, but I didn't answer right away. Instead of admitting she had been caught, Jessica started scrambling for an explanation. Her voice shook as she blurted out that she had only done it to prove a point. She went on about how she was always treated unfairly, how she felt like no one ever believed her, and how she thought that if she staged something, she could expose the so-called favoritism in our family. It was nonsense, and she was throwing words together in a desperate attempt to justify what she had done. Our father's face darkened as she spoke. His jaw tightened, and he cut her off sharply, demanding to know why she would take it this far. There was no excuse for filing a false police report, for slandering me online, for going out of her way to sabotage my reputation. He asked her straight up if she had any idea what she had done to me. Mom stood off to the side, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. She wasn't saying much, but the devastation in her eyes was clear. Jessica had lied to her, played the victim, dragged the entire family into this mess. And for what? Attention? Revenge? I took a breath and finally spoke. I told the officers I wanted to press charges. Jessica had made sure to turn as many people as possible against me, nearly costing me my job in the process. If I had no proof, her accusations would have stuck. She didn't just make a mistake, she deliberately tried to ruin my life. I wasn't going to let her walk away from this without consequences. The second I said it, Jessica's entire body sagged. The tears came fast, and she started pleading, saying she never meant for things to go this far. Her voice cracked as she begged me to reconsider, saying she was just upset, just emotional, that she didn't think it through. She kept saying she was sorry, but the words felt empty. She wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was sorry she got caught. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. The damage was already done. Outside of the house, things were moving even faster. The truth was spreading. Without me even lifting a finger, Jessica's own friends started turning on her. Screenshots of her accusations were everywhere. The same people who had defended her before were now demanding explanations. She panicked. She started deleting posts, locking down her accounts, even deactivating some of them. But it was too late. The internet never forgets. The officers didn't arrest her on the spot, but they did say they needed to take her in for questioning. She looked at our parents one last time before walking out with them, her face blotchy from crying. Mom turned to me, her voice breaking, and asked if I was sure I wanted to go through with this. I could hear the desperation in her tone. She wanted me to drop it, to just move on like she had asked me to before. Dad didn't agree. He shook his head, saying Jessica needed to deal with the consequences of her actions. If she got away with this now, what would stop her from doing it again? I stuck to my decision. I wasn't backing down. That night, Jessica didn't come back. She stayed with a friend, probably the only one she had left. The house was quiet for the first time in weeks, but it didn't feel peaceful. It felt like the eye of a storm. The legal process began, though it wasn't instant. I consulted a lawyer, who explained the steps required for a defamation case. Since Jessica had made public accusations and tried to damage my reputation, we had a strong case, but it would take time to file motions and gather the necessary evidence. My lawyer advised me to move forward, though they cautioned that lawsuits don't resolve overnight. A few days passed before Jessica reached out again. She sent a long, dramatic text, apologizing for everything, but even in her apology, she couldn't help but try to shift the blame. She talked about how she had been going through a rough time, how she felt like no one cared about her struggles, how she was hurt that I had always been the responsible one while she felt overlooked. She admitted she had made mistakes but begged me to reconsider my decision, saying she didn't deserve to have her life ruined over one bad choice. I didn't respond. I forwarded the message to my lawyer and blocked her number. After that, I never heard from her directly again. But that wasn't the end of it. Others started coming forward with more stories about her behavior. She had done similar things before, maybe not to this level, but enough that it made me wonder how long she had been getting away with lying. The more I looked, the more I realized that this situation was bigger than I had thought, and it wasn't over yet. The legal process had officially begun. After consulting with my lawyer, I moved forward with the defamation case against Jessica. The false police report, the public accusations, the damage to my reputation, it was all documented, and now it was in the hands of the law. I also filed a report regarding the vandalism, ensuring that everything she had done would be brought to light. Jessica received the court summons a few days later. At first, she ignored it, acting like it was just going to disappear if she didn't acknowledge it. She didn't respond, didn't make a move, as if she thought I was bluffing. But reality hit her fast when a second notice arrived. This wasn't something she could just run from. Mom, on the other hand, was getting desperate. She kept pleading with me to drop the case, saying it would ruin Jessica's future, and that this was something we should handle as a family. She insisted that Jessica wasn't thinking straight, that she had made a mistake, but I stood firm. Jessica had gone out of her way to try and destroy my life, and she had no problem watching me struggle through the consequences of her actions. Now it was her turn to deal with them. Instead of taking accountability, Jessica started a new rumor. She told anyone who would listen that I had doctored the footage to frame her. It was ridiculous. Anyone who saw the video knew how clear it was. But that didn't stop her from trying. My lawyer warned me to document every lie she spread because it only strengthened my case. And it wasn't just me who had had enough. Jessica's own friends started turning on her. Some of them had defended her at first, believing her story, but now they felt betrayed. They had gone to bat for her, only to find out they had been lied to. One of her former friends even reached out to me. She told me Jessica had pulled similar stunts before, not to this extreme, but enough to make her question how long she had been getting away with things. The fallout wasn't just social. Over the next few months, Jessica's financial troubles began piling up. The vandalism case and ongoing legal fees were starting to take a toll. She initially tried to manage it on her own, but as her expenses added up, she turned to our parents for money. And for the first time, Dad refused to help. He told her she had made this mess and she had to clean it up herself. Things at her job weren't going well either. Word spread fast, and her boss found out about the lawsuit. She received a formal warning, and people at work started distancing themselves from her. The same coworkers she had complained to about me were now avoiding her altogether. That was when she finally broke. She sent me a long, dramatic message offering to settle. She said she would pay me off if I dropped everything and let it go. It was filled with excuses, how she didn't mean for things to get this bad, how she had acted out of frustration, of how she was willing to make things right if I just agreed to move on. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the message to my lawyer. Jessica must have realized that the walls were closing in because out of nowhere, she announced that she was moving out of state. She framed it as a fresh start, claiming she needed to get away from all the drama. But it was obvious she was trying to escape the consequences. My lawyer was one step ahead. Before she could pack up and disappear, legal action was taken to ensure she couldn't just run without dealing with the lawsuit first. She was forced to stay and face the situation she had created. Then, the final blow, the official court date was set. Jessica had no choice but to lawyer up. There was no running from this anymore. The police had already started investigating her after I presented the security footage, and now, with the court case underway, she had even fewer options. Her lawyer tried to argue that she had acted out of emotional distress, claiming that she wasn't thinking clearly and had made a terrible mistake in the heat of the moment. But the security footage told a different story. It showed her sneaking out, vandalizing her own car, and then storming back inside as if she had just uncovered some great injustice. There was no panic, no hesitation, just a deliberate act meant to frame me. The footage destroyed any sympathy her lawyer was trying to build. Then something unexpected happened. One of Jessica's former friends, someone who had originally defended her, stepped forward with new information. She admitted that Jessica had a history of exaggerating stories and bending the truth. While she hadn't expected her to go this far, she recalled Jessica making comments about how I needed to be taught a lesson in a way that, in hindsight, sounded suspicious. This friend had even seen Jessica researching how to make scratches look worse on a car without causing too much actual damage. The revelation sent shockwaves through the case. Jessica wasn't just acting out in a moment of anger. This was calculated. And then came another blow. Jessica had originally tried to present evidence to the police, a blurry photo from a neighbor's security camera that supposedly showed me near her car. But when forensic analysts examined the image, they discovered that it had been altered. The timestamp had been manipulated, and the original footage didn't match Jessica's claims. She had tampered with evidence to make her story more believable. That alone was enough to open an entirely new investigation into her. At home, things weren't much better for her. Dad had completely cut her off financially. He made it clear he wasn't paying a cent toward her legal fees, rent, or anything else. He was done enabling her. But Mom, she was still in denial. Even as Jessica's lies collapsed around her, she kept making excuses, saying that Jessica just needed help, and that this was all spiraling out of control. But then, Mom found out something that changed everything. Jessica had been secretly stealing money from a joint account she shared with Mom. Small amounts at first, but over time, it had added up to thousands. Mom was stunned. She had been defending Jessica at every turn, only to find out that Jessica had been taking advantage of her the entire time. For the first time, I saw the realization hit Mom. Jessica wasn't just making mistakes. She was manipulative. Meanwhile, my case against Jessica was looking stronger than ever. My lawyer told me that with all the evidence stacked against her, a legal victory was almost guaranteed. Jessica must have known it too because she suddenly tried a new tactic, damage control. She posted a long, drawn-out apology online, full of dramatic language about how she had been struggling with her mental health and how she had let her emotions get the best of her. She called herself deeply flawed and claimed she never meant to hurt anyone. But most people weren't buying it. Her former friends, the same ones who had been fooled before, started speaking up. More and more people shared stories about Jessica's past, revealing a pattern of deceit and manipulation. Then Jessica tried to run again. She booked a flight out of state, hoping to start over somewhere new before the legal process caught up with her. But my lawyer was already ahead of her. Because of the ongoing legal issues, she was warned not to leave until everything was resolved. If she did, it could escalate her situation even further. But her problems didn't stop there. Because of the fake evidence she had submitted to the police, another investigation was opened. What had started as a civil defamation case was now turning into something more serious. Filing a false police report was bad enough, but deliberately tampering with evidence? That put her in even deeper trouble. Mom hesitated, torn between defending Jessica and acknowledging the undeniable truth. She still asked me if I really wanted to go through with it, but there was a difference in her tone, less pleading, more resignation. Jessica had made her choices. She had spent weeks trying to ruin my life, and now she was facing the consequences of her own actions. With multiple charges stacking up against her, Jessica's future was looking worse than ever. And for once, she had no one to blame but herself. Jessica finally showed up in court, looking nothing like the confident person she had once been. Her usual arrogance was gone, replaced by a disheveled and nervous appearance. Her lawyer stood beside her, flipping through papers, already struggling to find a defense that could hold up against the overwhelming evidence. When my lawyer played the security footage in court, the room went silent. The video showed Jessica sneaking outside in the middle of the night, slashing her own tires, and then storming back inside. There was no arguing against it. It was clear, undeniable proof of her deception. Jessica barely moved as the footage played. Her expression said it all. She was completely defeated. Her lawyer looked tense, clearly aware that there was no way to spin this in her favor. The judge, unimpressed with her excuses, called her actions calculated and malicious, warning that she was facing serious legal consequences. Realizing they were losing, Jessica's lawyer suggested a plea deal. If she admitted to her wrongdoing and agreed to a settlement, she could avoid a harsher outcome. My lawyer and I discussed the offer carefully. In the end, I agreed, on one condition. Jessica had to publicly admit what she had done. She was ordered to post a written statement online, confessing that she had framed me, faked the vandalism, and spread false accusations. The statement had to be clear, with no room for twisting the truth. When it finally went up, the reaction was immediate. People who had once believed her felt betrayed. The few remaining friends she had turned their backs on her, unwilling to be associated with someone who had lied so blatantly. With the legal case settled, Jessica's life continued to crumble. She was fined for filing a false police report and had to cover the legal fees, leaving her in serious debt. With no financial help from Dad and no way to maintain her lifestyle, she had no choice but to move in with a distant relative. At home, Dad was relieved that the ordeal was finally over, while Mom still insisted that Jessica had just made a mistake, refusing to fully accept how far her daughter had gone. Meanwhile, I focused on moving forward. I worked on rebuilding my reputation at work, distancing myself from the drama Jessica had caused. My name was cleared, and with the truth out, I could finally breathe again. Then Jessica tried one last time. She sent me a long message begging for forgiveness. She claimed she had lost everything and didn't want things to end like this. But I had nothing left to say to her. I didn't respond. Instead, I blocked her. And that was the end of it. Jessica became nothing more than a distant memory, a cautionary tale of how lies can spiral out of control.